And things like declining enrollment, reduction in budgets, the difficulties of finding staff, certificated and classified staff to fill positions, they're all real symptoms of what is our current reality. And so being able to have the foresight and the ability to navigate all of these challenges is something different today than it was when I started as a superintendent.
FutureCurrent with Dr. Stephen Bean.
Welcome to the FutureCurrent podcast with Dr. Stephen Bean. And today we had Jerry Almendarez as a guest. So Dr. Bean, he just left the studio. Thoughts?
What resonated me with Jerry is that he truly lives the mantra of my leadership. Any leadership organization I go to, I always say we have to involve those who are most impacted in decisions in the decision-making process. So listening to him gave me hope for future leaders like him in terms of how we implement future tools like AI, is involve those in the community that are going to be most impacted by it.
I agree. And I have known Jerry for years, and I have seen what he has done with community and transparency. And here we go. Here's Jerry Almendarez, former superintendent of Santa Ana Unified School District.
I've been really excited to have you because one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is AI and the future of our community using AI, right? And so Jerry, you have been through various levels of leadership and education, right?
Yeah.
And now you're supporting multiple organizations, including educational organizations around innovation and foresight.
Yeah.
So what currently exactly does that mean and look like?
Well, what that means, and it looks like the opportunity for leaders in organizations to do the best job of predicting future outcomes through foresight. So we, as leaders, as educational leaders specifically, we spend so much time putting out fires and addressing concerns that are happening right now, but we spend very little time planning for the future. And I think that's the value that strategic foresight brings to leaders in public education, is to begin to open the door on potential futures that impact communities, that impact schools, that impact the students. And so my charge is to help organizations really begin to start to embrace this foresight and future thinking, to identify signals that are happening out in the environment across the county and across the country, and begin to make sense out of what those signals are. And eventually those signals become drivers, and then eventually those drivers impact the work that we do on the ground level.
So when you were a superintendent, what is one of those foresights that you wish you would have had, let's say back in the day with AI, without AI? But now that you have AI, what would have helped you?
Well, I think, wasn't really in the foresight mindset when I was early in my superintendency. It didn't happen until COVID hit. And so for a good 10 years, spent working hard, putting out fires, and trying to do our best to plan for the future, at frustration, making little to no progress in closing the academic achievement gap. And so when COVID hit and I came to Santa Ana in 2020, the reflection of hearing people say we got to get back to normal, some sense of normalcy over and over and over again, not only at the county and the state level, but across the country. For us in Santa Ana, normal wasn't acceptable because it was below average academic performance. And so that's when we really started to think deep and reflect in the work that we were doing internally with our team, and came across the framework for strategic foresight research and began to engage in that. So much so that we brought in the Institute for the Future to come and work with myself and executive cabinet, and then eventually our team, a team of about 40 district stakeholders, to work on reimagining what teaching, learning, and leading looks like.
Through the lens of
Foresight.
Interesting. Okay, so what were some of those levers that you pulled in the beginning of that process?
So to really begin the conversation about what could a 21st century learning environment look like? What does a classroom 20 to 30 years from now involve? Is it bricks and mortar? Is it open facilities and active engagement with adults, and not just the certificated teachers, but other community leaders? The performance-based outcomes, it's not so much that kids do good on tests, but can they actually perform what they're being asked to perform or meet the standards? I would much rather a student be able to fix my car than tell me how to fix my car. And so really engaging and reimagining how we provide opportunities for students was really where we began to create this new innovative environment. Creative Collaborative Collective is what we call it in Santa Ana. And that was a group of about 40 district stakeholders that spent their time looking for signals throughout the region and throughout the industries, and then being able to interpret, what does this innovation mean to my kids at the elementary level? And then we didn't stop at the kids. We asked ourselves, if our kids are expected to have these skills, then what are the adults in the system? How are they providing kids opportunities to gain these skills? And so when we went into our to classrooms and we looked, not that people weren't working hard, everybody was working hard. It's just that we didn't see those examples and opportunities being given to our kids unilaterally across our system. So then we started to focus on the adults and providing the adults opportunities to experiment, explore, and make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and continue to grow. And then we didn't stop there. We said, okay, now if we're expecting our teachers and our students to be innovative and to engage in these various platforms and opportunities to be creative, then how are we engaging our leaders in order for them to understand what opportunities they need to give their staff and their students? And so that's where I landed with what I'm doing now, is working on providing opportunities for leaders of the organizations to really understand the innovation, understand foresight, understand what it means to look for signals and how these signals become drivers in the decisions that we make, so we can create better futures for our kids and our communities, as opposed to just putting out fires and solving today's problems.
Putting out fires, when you said that. By the way, I'm so happy that I get to see you without a tie for once, because I know Jerry always has a tie when he's superintendent. So you're looking very nice. And I just think that that's so important that we take that time. And there's always going to be stuff in that, I think of the Eisenhower decision matrix. There's always stuff in the urgent and important box. Yeah. But there's also stuff that is important and not urgent, and we have to make it a priority. Exactly. And I hear you doing that.
Yeah. And things like declining enrollment, reduction in budgets, the difficulties of finding staff, certificated and classified staff to fill positions, they're all real symptoms of what is our current reality. And so being able to have the foresight and the ability to navigate all of these challenges is something different today than it was when I started as a superintendent. Completely, the job is completely different today. And I'll give you an example, or one of the reasons why my focus is where it is. About 7 years ago, I had the unfortunate experience to visit the hospital 3 times. And the last time was probably the most scariest, but all stress-related symptoms, right? And I remember the doctor coming into the room, and he goes, "I got good news and I got bad news." And I said, "What's the good news?" And he goes, "The good news is your blood tests and your x-rays, everything came back negative. You're good." And I said, "Well, what's the bad news then?" And he goes, "If you don't change something, you may not walk out of here next time."
Wow.
And that really hit like a ton of bricks, because, my wife was in the room and she was in tears, and the oxygen tube is in my nose. I'm looking up at the lights thinking, I'm in my 40s. I should not be in the emergency room. But I share that story with people because during COVID in 2020, it kind of felt like the same symptoms were happening, not physically for me, but for the systems that we were working in.
Mm.
And so at the time during COVID, and then around the same time in 2021, 22, OpenAI released ChatGPT. It was a pivotal moment in, mankind with this innovation that's taking off that made us reflect, like, if we don't change something,
Mm-hmm.
then something's going to happen to us.
Mm.
And so that's what that's the motivation behind what I do. And the reality is there's signals that are happening all around us. Our enrollment is declining for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get teachers to hire staff for a reason. The budgets are being reduced for a reason. We had more money during COVID than we've ever had, but yet chronic absenteeism continued to decrease, and there was no significant change in academic performance. So if that tells me what we've been doing, at least, in my career for the past 30 years, hasn't been working. People are working harder. They're doing more. We're adding more programs. We're adopting new curriculum, but there has not really been any significant change in the academic outcomes. And so when OpenAI released the ChatGPT, and then others followed, it was really a moment in time where we said, this is something special that probably won't happen again in my lifetime. And it could be a game changer for our community if our kids in our community begin to get the skills that will make them competitive globally in the future.
So you're kind of like a doctor, but you're an AI doctor, right? So you come in and you use AI. So what are some of those, well, give examples of some of those symptoms or signals that you may see in a system. It doesn't have to be educational.
Yeah.
And then how would you help that organization use AI to change the system?
Yeah. So I think when we began using it, we began at the executive cabinet level. So, our biggest challenge is we get thousands of emails collectively a day. We get a lot of questions in those emails, and we're expected to have all the answers from the community, from students, from labor groups, from board members, from community leaders, right? Well, it's very easy for very important information to get lost in all of that email, especially as we're spending most of our day putting out fires. And so what we found ourselves doing was putting out the fires during the day, and then in the evening, responding to all of our emails. And so very quickly, as we began to engage with the platforms and the technology, we were able to very quickly recognize the ability to respond to some of these critical emails in a very timely manner. And, on average, if we had a email from, let's say, a board member, 20, 25 minutes on collecting the data and, making sure that the data was correct and putting it in a professional format to send back to that board member, and then all the other board members, took a little bit of time. But with the innovation and the technology that exists at the time, we were able to do it in seconds, and then spend a little bit of time with our executive team going over those data points within the emails to verify and validate its accuracy. And then we were able to send it out. So it reduced the amount of time on responding to emails dramatically, which I got to a point towards the end of my superintendency that I was actually going home and just being home because I had the innovation, the technology had allowed me to do the work before I left. And knowing on my way home that all of the emails, all of the questions were answered, and was very confident on the accuracy and the information that was gathered, that it was a good feeling to get home and just relax.
So like a good medical practitioner, they use the tools that they have to take advantage of how to help a patient be better. Right?
Exactly. And that's the thing is, like, in what I find challenging right now is these tools are amazing tools, and they're just tools. It's just like a calculator, but you have to know how to use it, right?
Yeah.
But yet a lot of organizational leaders aren't engaging the platforms to its fullest capacity, which could make them way more efficient, not just to be better leaders, but to engage in a more human way.
Yeah, that's what I hear from you is it's not just about efficiency so I can get more done. And, we have a culture that glorifies busyness,
Yeah.
but okay, well, what do I need to lean into as a human?
Yeah.
And where can I leverage the technology so that I'm not spending time on things that this could do well? But you're also Ethan Mollick talks about co-intelligence and always the human in the loop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
being really intentional about where should I as a human really invest my time versus where can I offload?
Yeah. And, another example that we used was when we did our student listening sessions. We'd spent 7 months with community leaders during COVID developing our graduate profile. And then as we were getting ready to roll it out, one of our principals said, "Hey, Mr. Almendarez, you're asking us to create a system for kids, our graduate profile, and share with our communities what that looks like. But look around the room, there are no kids."
Mm-hmm.
And my jaw dropped and my heart skipped a beat. And I'm like, oh my God, did we forget something? And initially I did not want to pause, but my executive cabinet, when we came back in after that meeting, we debriefed. And my cabinet says, we really need to pause. And it was the hardest decision for me to make, but I know it was the right decision. And I thought I was going to lose my job because we had some very high profile community leaders spend 7 months of their time looking at research from across the globe, identifying high-performing educational systems, and then taking those characteristics and reflecting them back on what we were doing in Santa Ana. And but we paused. We started to do a student listening session, and one of my team members said, "Hey, there's a lot of students that we have to engage. Can we use iPads and a microphone to collect the responses?" And we said, "Yeah, sure." So the first year we did this, we interviewed over 600 students, randomly selected, kindergarten through high school, and we had over 60 hours of audio that somebody had to put headphones on, listen, transcribe, create a report, give it to Ed Service Team, and then Ed Service Team did a trend analysis, which took another few months to do it because there was so much information. But ultimately, as time went on, the next year we did it, ChatGPT came in and one of our team members said, "Hey, can we take the transcript, plug it into ChatGPT and have it do a trend analysis?" And we're like, "Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, see what it does." So the next year we shaved 2 months off of that process.
Wow.
And then the following year, the AI platforms were getting more advanced. And we cut it down from 60 hours to about 40 hours. And one of our team members said, "Hey, can we take the audio and have AI transcribe it for us?" And we said, "Sure." So we took the audio, in a matter of minutes, it transcribed 40 hours of student responses. We took that transcription, plugged it in a chat, and then within half an hour, had the trend analysis in our hands. And what that did is what used to take us a year now took us months. And so we were able to get updated information into our teacher staff development hands so they can actually train the teachers that year.
Wow.
Where before we had to wait a year. And most of the time, so the first year we did it, we got the information, the trend analysis in May. School was coming to an end or was ending. They spent the first part of the year doing the analysis and how they're going to implement it and roll it out into the teacher trainings. So mid-year, maybe we were taking last year's data and training teachers in the following year. But the last year, we were taking the data in the current year and then using it to train teachers in the current year.
So Jerry, I mean, you obviously had a vision that needed to start at the top as a superintendent of Santa Ana Unified. Yeah. And then you got your cabinet to believe in that vision.
Yeah.
And then transformation started happening.
Yeah.
And then from what you just said, students are getting into this, right? And so now you had from cabinet to teachers, to schools, to students, this belief that AI offers these tools to help us in many ways, right? But what do you tell the community at large that may be still very hesitant about AI and not understanding that the benefits can outweigh the insecurities they have about it?
Yeah. Well, I think that challenge existed then and it exists now because how quickly the technology is advancing. But I think it's important for us to learn and evolve alongside the technology as it's evolving, because we need to guide its evolution and not be impacted by it.
Right.
And I think for us in Santa Ana, the driver was the jobs of the future. How are we preparing our kids and our community to be competitive in a global market? Our kids already had assets. They were multilingual. Well, if we're looking at a global economy now, then what skills are we giving them other than their languages to allow them to be even more competitive? And that is the embracing this innovative state that we're in. And so when we looked at the jobs of the futures and when we looked at the things that we were offering in our classrooms, there was not very much alignment. So we leveraged that conversation about we're going to use this innovation and this technology to make our kids more competitive. But we needed the teachers to come along with us. And same with the teachers. There was some resistance and there was some embracing. Same with parents. But we had we didn't force it on anybody. The way we rolled it out was to ask for volunteers. And we asked anybody if they were interested in learning the platforms, then let us know. But all we ask is that you tell us what platforms you're using, how you're using them, and what the benefit you're seeing. And so through social media, some of our teachers took us up on that and said, all right, and started to push out some pretty cool content on Instagram and other platforms that started to get our attention. And then we started to reach out to those teachers and say, hey, tell me more. But back to your original question, it really began with executive cabinet making a mindset shift. There was a shift that we had to make as district leaders to say, okay, the traditional way we envision leading has to take a back seat. We have to be more inclusive. We have to look for what we call reverse mentors, which would be younger researchers or other individuals that are doing things that we're not used to doing. And I can't tell you how important that is, because I had a few of my reverse mentors pull me into places that I normally wouldn't have been based on my generation and my experience, like things like TikTok or Discord or, these other social media platforms that give me a glimpse at the emerging trends that are happening, not only in education, but in other industries as well.
And I'll just say that what I have noticed from Jerry is that he's so transparent with it. As a superintendent, he was constantly telling the story. So, what's that saying? Like, if we don't know information, we just make it up. We create the story ourselves. And he was telling the story on social media so people could see what was happening. And he was making the positives really, really loud.
Well, and that was intentional because, that was a way to hold ourselves accountable. And if things are going to, good or bad, if we were going to know because we were on social media if we were headed in the right direction or not. And but we had more support than we did resistance. And when we did get a little bit of resistance, our community came to say, no, this is important. This is why we need to do, keep moving forward. But goes back to a session that we had. One of our team members, our executive director, says, hey, things are starting to get momentum now. The parents are starting to ask more questions. Can we hold a parent information night? And I remember dreading to hear that question because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? And but we did. We encouraged them to hold a parent session, and like a nervous superintendent, not knowing what the outcome was going to be, I reached out to my team the next day and I said, how'd it go? And they were just so excited. The parents were so excited, captured all kinds of wonderful testimonials and videos, pushed it out on social media. And like a proud father, proud superintendent, I was there with a smile from ear to ear, just looking at the excitement in the parents' eyes about, it looked like they were excited because their kids were getting opportunities to travel the world virtually or to be able to learn this innovation that not very many. At the time, districts and organizations were banning, but we had an open policy. And so, that's what I call leading with social influence part, which is the reimagining the leading part in this new innovative environment. And like AI, if 80% of adults' primary source of information is via social media, and we're not on social media as district leaders, we're missing 80% of our target market.
That's right.
And so what better way to get our message out than for us to tell our story? Because if we're not telling it, somebody's going to tell it, and it may not be what we want out there. And so that led us to create what we called our brand ambassador program in Santa Ana. And there were volunteers from all of our schools, students, staff, parents that we brought in and trained on how to use the platforms. But also we informed them what the graduate profile was. We informed them of the look fors. When you go out on your school site and you see components of the graduate profile being addressed, capture it in video, capture it in still pictures, and then send it to us. Push it out on your social media feeds. And that was the momentum that we got when people just started to get excited about working. And that was a direct result of one of my dear friends, a community member who was on the team that drafted the graduate profile. And very early in that process, he goes, "Jerry, don't waste my time." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "I've been through 3 superintendents, and every single one of them has asked me to be a part of a conversation that's similar to this. And every time we're done, it sits on a shelf, and I don't know what the outcome is." And so that stuck with me. And I thought, I'm not going to let him not see what we're doing. And so brand ambassador, with the help of my assistant, was created, and it just took off from there.
So as a dad, I have to ask you, father to father. I love AI. I use AI. I don't know what I would do without AI. I don't even know how I was a superintendent before without AI. So I use it daily.
Yeah.
And regularly. And yet my kids tease me about using it so much.
Yeah.
In fact, I encourage them to use these tools, and they said, "Oh, Dad, come on. You don't need AI again. What do you think we're doing wrong as adults if our kids are saying that?"
Yeah, and that worries me because, there may be other countries that aren't having that conversation with their kids. But I think the unknown for adults, we have a tendency to gravitate back to our comfort zone. And if we're not engaged, or if we're not using, or as recently as a few weeks ago, I was with a group of superintendents, and one of the comments that was shared was, I don't like to use it because it feels like cheating.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, don't think of it as cheating. Think of it as your superpower. You're still working hard. You're still making decisions. You're still feeding it the input, and the output that it gets is no different than sending a transcript to an editor. If you're writing a book, you're gonna spend months putting words on pages. You send it to an editor. That editor reads it over and improves the writing, and then they send it back to you. How is this any different? It is exactly the same. The only difference is you get the output almost instantly, and you don't have to wait months for it. So if it makes you a better leader, especially in this innovative environment, then so be it. But I think for our kids, they're hearing us say it's cheating. They're hearing us say you have to develop your cognitive skills. They're hearing the adults say all of these things about why they shouldn't use it. And what we need to do is think of why they should use it. And so I have a 14-year-old grandson that I use it with him on a regular basis. And the reason why I do that is because I want him to see its capacity, but I also want him to start to think of ways that he can use it to provide opportunities for him in the future. What skills are you going to need? He wants to be an entrepreneur. He's 14, and he wants to be financially independent by age 25. So I told him,
didn't we all, right?
So I told him, I said, put it in the AI platform and give it your age and ask it what your plan is. And he did it, and he was like shocked. And so now he's practicing his communication skills to build the ability to be a better communicator as a skill that was identified in the output for him to work on.
Wow.
I mean, I feel like we could talk about AI
forever.
This should be a long form or
Yes.
a series, but there's so much more to it. And I know people are going to want to stay connected with you so that they can continue to learn from you. What is the best way for people to reach out to you after this?
On LinkedIn, if they just type in Jerry Almendarez on LinkedIn, they can DM me there. I have a special space. It's a closed private space for district leaders who want to know more. The reason why it's closed is because district leaders often get emails or encouraged by vendors and to purchase products and stuff like that. And I just wanted a safe space where a district leader can ask a question, any question, and get a response to it. So I have that on my LinkedIn account. So if anybody's interested in joining that, just DM me and I'll send them a link to that. I did create my own company after I retired, Creative Futures Collaborative. So it's on, you can Google that and get a hold of me there as well. But yeah, it's just...
you said Futures Collaborative, right?
Creative Futures Collaborative.
Creative Futures Collaborative. Yeah. Very good. And they can just Google that, or
they can Google that. Yeah, Google that, or DM me on LinkedIn.
Okay, fantastic. So, Jerry, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I've learned so much about in terms of how AI it predicts, but it also helps us transform, communities.
Yeah.
And so we like to ask our guests one final question as a part of our Future Current show, and that is, what is something giving you a sense of hope for our Orange County community?
Oh, I think the 5-3-1 plan is a good example of that and especially the county's willingness to embrace this conversation of AI implementation.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, I've been part of conversations in other states. In California, this is what excites me, is the vision that the county brings to support their communities and the districts and the willingness to engage in these conversations. They're not always going to be easy conversations. There is going to be some resistance, but let's identify what those concerns are and then address them, because we may have a blind spot. And so the only way we're going to be successful at this is by being inclusive in these conversations and then rolling things out.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Future Current, a podcast from the Orange County Department of Education. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow, rate, and review Future Current on your favorite podcast platform. The opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Orange County Department of Education, its leadership, or staff. To learn more about the programs and people shaping the future of Orange County, visit ocde.us.